Hey friends, we are here in Mark chapter 5, and this chapter is pretty amazing. You know, the things that Jesus is doing here are pretty amazing. You know, I'll just say that, you know, a lot of times I search for deeper meaning in what Jesus is doing here. And when I hear a story like this first one, you don't really need to find a deeper meaning. It's just awesome. So, it says that, you know, Jesus was kind of already in a boat, you know, at the end of the last chapter. And so it said, okay, they went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And when they got there, they gave a little background about this guy who's basically been terrorizing this city. You know, people wouldn't go in this certain area because they knew that there was this guy here with an unclean spirit. You know, we would probably call it a demon. And in fact, I do. And so he was so violent and he was so strong, nobody could subdue him, nobody could bind him. Even if they put chains on him, he was so strong, he would just rip the chains right off. And he would run around naked and, you know, pretty unpleasant guy. And so Jesus goes, and what's interesting to me about this chapter, or about this part here, is that it really gives us kind of a strange insight into Jesus and his relationship with the spiritual world. You know, I know I mentioned it a couple days ago, but Jesus, like, the demons all recognize Jesus. They recognize him right away. And I've never noticed it before, you know, this run through of this book. But there's just so much insight into demons and their understanding of Jesus. It's incredible to me. So this guy seeks out Jesus. He runs right up to Jesus, and he's like, what do you have to do with me? And he even calls him Jesus, the Son of the Most High God, which is something that Jesus hasn't even declared yet to even his disciples. You know, later on, he'll ask Peter, like, who do people say that I am? And he'll say, you're the Christ. And Jesus will say, you know, flesh and bone has not given you this, but my Father who is in heaven, he's given you this insight. But this man with an evil spirit is able to say it right away. He's like, what do you have to do with me? You know, Son of the Most High God. And what's interesting to me is that he's like coming before Jesus, like he's bowing down to him. You know, he recognizes right away that Jesus has all authority. He has all authority to everything, to creation, you know, including the spiritual world. There's nothing he can do. God has found him, and he starts pleading that he doesn't want to go away from this land. And so he starts making kind of a deal with Jesus. And he's like, okay, why don't I go into the pigs? Now, I don't know why Jesus allowed him to go into the pigs. Jesus could have said, you know, I banish you, you know, and you can never come back anywhere. And this demon would have had to obey him. And he's done it to other people. Or not to other people, but to other spirits. And he says, you know, what is your name? And they say, my name is Legion, for there are many of us. So it's not really a name, it's more like a number. And so he's just saying, you know, there's many of us in here. And we know that, you know, from the end of this part, that he cast all the demons into the pigs, and the pigs went running into the Sea of Galilee. And it was thousands of pigs, which means that there was probably thousands of demons. Just very interesting to me how the demons recognize Jesus as the creator, as their master. It's interesting to me that the demons recognize the authority that Jesus has over them. So what's really interesting is this guy who is possessed by all these demons comes back. He probably looked good, wearing clothes, and the people see him in the city, and they are afraid, and rightfully so. Like, whoever did this and somehow was more powerful than this man that they'd probably been afraid of for a while now. And so they say, Jesus, we want you to leave. They didn't really know who he was, but they say, we want you to leave. And the guy who had the demons cast out wanted to go with Jesus. And I can understand that too. I would want to stick with Jesus too if he saved me from such a horrible situation. I would say, I will follow you anywhere. But Jesus didn't. He kept him from following him. And he's essentially saying, you stay here and tell people about me here. That's such an interesting perspective, because secretly, I guess it's not much of a secret. I'm just coming right out and telling you, I would love to be a missionary. I would love to go somewhere and live an extreme life for Jesus. But over and over again, I felt like God has said, I want you to stay here. I've got other plans for you. Now, I hope, maybe someday I will be able to travel. I will be able to go to some other place and preach the gospel to people that don't know it. But for right now, I'm where he wants me to be, and there's precedent for that here. So there's an interesting aspect of this chapter, and that is that here this man was unclean, and then the next person that he heals is unclean in a different way. So Jesus is told that there's a young girl who's the daughter of the head of the synagogue, and that she's on the brink of death. And before he rushes off to heal her, somebody touches his garment, his robe, and is healed by it. I think it's interesting that in the book of Acts, people were actually doing things like that with Paul's garments. Paul had the Spirit of God in him, and he was healing people left and right also. And so he was able to do that as well. But it's interesting that it's not the garment. It's not the garment that's making them well. It's the connection with the Holy Spirit. But when she touches his garment and Jesus kind of confronts her about it, he says, go and be well. Your faith has made you well. So here we go again. Here's my, something else that I keep on getting out of these passages, and that's that it's faith. The way to connect with God is through faith. So after that, somebody says word, and the daughter has died. And Jesus, the interesting thing about this part to me is that Jesus is trying to hide the fact that he is raising this little girl from the dead. I read a book a long time ago when I was in seminary. I had to read a commentary because I was doing a long report in the book of Mark. And so somebody wrote this commentary, a really great one. It was called Jesus' Defeat of Death. I think that was the name. And he was pointing out that in the book of Mark, he is trying to prove this point over and over again, and that is that Jesus is more powerful than death, that Jesus has the ability to change the outcome of death. He over and over again demonstrates that Jesus has defeated death. And here's another example where he goes in and he says, she's just sleeping, but really she died, and Jesus just goes in and heals her. So that should be encouraging to us, that that the God that we trust in is so much more powerful than even death. He's so much more powerful than these spirits. He's so much powerful than these sicknesses and illnesses that we go through. And I mentioned that Paul had that Holy Spirit. We really do have access to the ability to do away with some of these things. And I'm not saying that he'll always that God will always choose to work on our behalf, but we do know, going back to Romans, that all things work for the good for those that love God and who are called according to his purpose.